This video focuses on managing a user's access to the solution, but will incorporate other elements to provide a cursory but comprehensive presentation on user management. There are four major aspects to managing a user once it's been created. The user itself, it needs personal details, a password, and other defining characteristics like a time zone and user group. The user scope of access to the Automic Automation solution. Users are specific to clients. As such, they are first created in client 0 and then assigned to an operational client. Then we have two sets of capabilities. The first is privileges. This stores definitions to allow or restrict access to the environment itself. By this we mean perspectives, administration functions, and more. The other is authorizations, which define objects, their names and types, and the types of actions the user can perform on them. By this we mean read, delete, execute, and more. Let's briefly go over the procedure to create a user and at a minimum give it a password. We start in client 0 since it's accepted that administrators manage users. We're in the administration perspective. We simply click the user button. Remember that the user's department will be part of the user's required login credentials. A user should have a name, can be made inactive or locked, has personal details, can belong to a time zone, a user group, and more. For now, the only requirement we have is to give the user passwords. We now have a user created in client 0, which means it's not able to access anything in the solution. The user is currently assigned to client 0, which doesn't do us much good. We want it to be able to access the functional parts of the product via an operational client. On the right side, we see a login screen to client 100 with the user's credentials already in the fields. We need to move the user to client 100 so it's able to log in. The user can log into the client. The problem now is that it has access to nothing. The screen is completely blank. We need to consider privileges and authorizations. A user's privileges determine the groups of functions the user can access. There are 6 groups of functions targeted by privileges, namely folders, administration, the web interface itself, advanced editing, the message function, and access control. We can enable each function by simply checking a box. As we move through the demo, we'll explain each group of functions. At the top, we find 2 functions: select all, which enables all privileges, and clear selection, which disables all of them. In our example, we show AWI access control, which defines privileges to the interface. In the demo, we'll give the user access to all perspectives, except administration, and show how that perspective is simply inactive. We start in client 0 and update the user. Let's briefly go over each group. The first is access to Explorer folders. This enables or disables access to Explorer. For example, we can disable access to No folder, which contains some client-specific environmental settings. The next group is administration. We can give the user administration privileges over its client. For example, it might have the ability to stop an entire client, which effectively ends all automation and operations. We can also give the user the ability to perform system upgrades. The next group is access to AWI, which is the web interface. This is an important one. Say a user is an entry-level operator and should be kept out of design data. We can enable the process monitoring perspective, messages, and my catalog, and all other GUI elements can be disabled. Once we've covered the other groups, we'll activate all perspectives except administration. These are more advanced privileges which concern backend and SQL internal variables mostly. These privileges address what the user can do in messages specifically. For example, we may want to keep it from seeing messages intended for the administrator. This set of privileges allows or restricts access to various operational data sets, like deactivated tasks or auto forecasts, and allows it to take over a task and modify its status manually. These are sensitive operational actions applicable to active tasks. This is the result of enabling all perspectives except administration. That perspective is simply not one of the available options. Now that we have access to the process assembly perspective, let's see what this user can do here. The user is unable to access anything in the perspective. This is because we have yet to define authorizations over folders and objects. Authorizations define action permissions on objects named either generically with types and wildcard symbols or specifically with names. Possible actions are read, write, execute, delete, cancel, and execution, access to a task execution history, open a task report, and modify a task at runtime. If you check a box, the user can perform the action, otherwise it can't. By combining objects and actions in several groups, we can design sophisticated systems of permissions. Let's consider some of the methods of designing authorizations. The first is the name of the object using the name fields. This is a straightforward naming system with wildcards, star, and question mark. Star means objects with any name. Star workflow star means any object, the name of which contains workflows, and the question mark replaces a single character. The read authorization on folders is very important. If you give full authorizations on workflows, but do not give a read authorization on the folder that contains them, the user is not able to access workflows and a red error message is displayed instead. More generally, without read authorizations on folders, the user will have access to no objects. You have the option of creating multiple lines in authorizations, and the group number will determine what they do. Each line can contain specific sets of authorizations on different objects. Lines that have the same group number are inclusive to fine-tune access, as we will show in a moment. Lines with different group numbers are exclusive. Automic Automation considers the most restrictive group, which then supersedes all other groups. The not option in the group list will reverse the effect of the authorization sets. Let's consider some examples. Keep in mind that permutation possibilities are endless, and these are by no means exhaustive. We recommend testing each configuration before applying it to a production environment. In the first example, we have a single line that applies to all object types and names. All authorizations are enabled except executes. The user is able to perform all actions on all objects except execute them. In the second example, we have two sets of authorizations that belong to the same group 1. The first line states the user has all action permissions on workflows, and the second states it has read permissions on folders. The user will be able to see all object types, but do nothing. It will be able to perform all actions on workflows. Here we need to be careful. A workflow is a composite object that includes tasks like jobs and file transfers. Because the user does not have execute authorization on these other types, it can't execute them. As a result, executing a workflow will fail because each task inside of it can't be executed. The third example states that the user can perform all actions on any object as long as it has the word workflow in its name. In situations like this, Automic Automation's naming convention is structured in such a way that we recommend using wildcard symbols. Explicit names tend to malfunction. Finally, in the last example, we have two groups. Group 1 allows everything, and Group 2 has all permissions on the workflow type. Group 2 is more restrictive than Group 1. It takes precedence, and Group 1 becomes inoperative, removing read authorizations on folders. The only active group is 2. The user reaches nothing in the web interface and gets a red error message. In Client 0, we change authorizations for the user to give it permissions on all objects. Note that task properties can be used to configure authorizations. For example, if you wanted to prevent executions of a workflow submitted with a specific login, you could do so here. The user can now perform all actions on all objects.